And welcome to High Energy Health. My name is Dawson Church, and each week on the show, I bring you information at the leading edge of health and healing. We also really focus on things you can use personally for your own well-being, practices, practical exercises, practical things you can do that really move the needle. And it's just great to have all the advanced research tools we have nowadays, because we can now tell if you do certain things, how your hormones are affected, how your genes are affected, how your brain waves are affected. And so these are allowing us to determine what many of these practices that seem so esoteric 10, 20, 50 years ago are actually doing in your body. And it turns out that many of them are profoundly beneficial to you. So we cover those, we talk about them, and again, we emphasize the importance of practice, of applying the things we talk about in this show. So welcome, it's good to have you here, and your being here is an expression of your commitment to your own well-being. My guest today is Dr. Dan Siegel. His newest book is called Aware, and he is a professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. He's also the author of the books Brainstorm and Mindsight. He has a real emphasis as well on the application of meditation and contemplative practice to children and child raising. Dan, it's a real pleasure to have you back here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawson. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
I was thinking about how we could talk today about topics that would be of the most benefit to people who are tuning in. And I wanted to focus on the whole idea of optimizing a meditation practice. So many people try meditation, of course, and you give wonderful methods, wonderful practices for harnessing the power of your imagination, your mind, your focus in meditation. I wanted to focus today on how the meditator can get past those initial hurdles, those initial blocks, those initial periods of it being difficult to practice, mind wandering, and then really optimize meditation practice. So I think if we can do that effectively today, we'll have performed a real service to the people who are tuning in.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, I mean, you have talked beautifully about this, Dawson, and I guess the thing I would begin with is the notion of kindness, that I think a lot of people understandably have an idea that they should be very rigorous in their meditation, they should be very disciplined, and they get a very intense reaction to when their mind gets distracted. That can sometimes be a feeling of hostility, or sometimes a hearing of a voice saying you're doing it wrong, or just a feeling of shame even, that, wow, I was asked by Dawson to do this or that, or I read this in a book and I can't even do it. What's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. That kind of feeling that can be a heaviness in the chest and a nauseous feeling in the belly, that feeling of shame. So the first thing to say is that kindness is really important. Shauna Shapiro beautifully talks about kind intention. Trudy Goodman Cornfield and Jack Cornfield and Ram Dass talk about loving awareness. Some people talk about self-care. Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer talk about self-compassion. These are all getting at, I think, the idea that there's an internal kind of attitude, a stance, a state of mind, an intention, a kind of an approach, whatever words you like to apply to this state of kind regard toward your experience. I think my mom, who's 90 now, she has a great way of saying it. You bring this attitude of amusement rather than getting, feeling that it's really aggravating you. You actually become amused by it. I think it's one of the most effective definitions of being mindful. And it has this acronym, that my mom also likes that we use, called COAL. You're curious, you're open, you're accepting, and you're loving toward even getting distracted. So you let the distraction go, you return. So that's the first place I would start with. We're going to summarize all of that with a simple word: kindness.
Yeah, and I know that is what happens to people. They close their eyes, and those parts of the brain that focus on the self, the default mode network, cranks up. Suddenly they're thinking about all the things they might do tomorrow and should do today, and all the random thoughts that have popped into their minds and activities from the last while. And so you sit there and you try to meditate, and all those things are driving you nuts. And so just having that stance, that perspective of kindness toward yourself is so powerful, because otherwise you can just get into self-recrimination and get stuck in that process of being involved in the self and never get beyond it. So I love that acronym of COAL, and really focusing on loving and forgiving yourself, even when you might feel at your most stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that what you're saying, Dawson, about that default mode business, it's really maybe a second point, which is that having a bit of a conceptual framework for what mindfulness and compassion really are as practices. And I think there's beautiful work from Siegel, not a relative of mine directly. I mean, different spelling of the last name. Zindel and Norman Farb and their colleagues in Toronto really pioneered the way towards some beautiful conceptualizations that, for those who are not yet experienced meditators, when they're asked to distinguish between, like, be aware of the meaning of this thing for you versus just be aware of sensation, they can't distinguish those two. So they're constantly activating their default mode network, which is it does a lot of things, but it's a sort of a mostly midline front to back set of interconnecting regions in the brain that's active when we're not given a task to do. And as you point out, it's a network, including the medial prefrontal area and the posterior cingulate, this midline set of circuits that is involved in self-understanding. It's even involved in empathy. So these are good things. But it also, when it gets excessively differentiated, it's what gets overly activated. So it by itself is not a problem. But when it gets overly activated, it starts worrying. It's worrying. Am I adequate? Am I enough? Did the things I do yesterday, do they meet the criteria of what I should be doing today? When I look at you, are you happy with what I'm saying or not? So my default mode network is the FOMO business, the fear of missing out. And I have this other term, the feeling of being inadequate, phobia, FOBI. This is all excessive default mode activation. So what Norman Farb and Zindel Siegel showed beautifully is that the first phase of mindfulness practice teaches you that these midline preoccupations in the brain are mutually inhibitory of the side areas that process sensation either from the outside world or even from the inside world of the body, called interoception. So to put it really simply, sensation, direct sensation of, let's say, the body, and preoccupation about is the self adequate or not, and then beating up on yourself saying, I'm not adequate, I'm not doing it the way it should be. Those midline preoccupations of the self and the side, or what's called lateral areas for sensation, inhibit each other. So if you can really learn the technique of just feeling the sensation of the breath, just feeling the sensation of your intestines, just feeling the sensations of your muscles, it actually will dial down an excessively activated default mode so that instead of being overly active, it calms down. So you don't get rid of it, you just have it not be engaged as much as it often is in modern culture. And the beautiful thing about that conceptualization is even a distraction, like, what did I do yesterday at the meeting? What's the meeting gonna be like next week? What about this, what about that? You just say, thank you, default mode. I appreciate all the great things you do for me. Not now, later. Right now, we're gonna be with the sensation of the breath. In breath, in breath, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. And those are lateral circuits you get activated. And so instead of seeing this default mode as a bad guy, you just say it needs to be put in a larger context of my whole brain.
Yeah, I heard a great phrase from a coach last week, and she said, that's the animal, that's the dog. She said, don't shoot your dog, train your dog. And
Yeah.
there are those parts of ourselves we are ashamed of, or we don't like, or we wish they'd go away. And I remember when I was a novice meditator, Dan, I would sit there and I try and meditate, and I try and follow the spiritual teacher's instructions to quiet my mind, I fail utterly. I get so angry and so upset. And so we had to learn back then about self-compassion, about the importance of being neutral around those parts of ourselves. And I wanted nothing more than to get rid of those parts of myself. I wished I could somehow, there were times when I literally, I sat there after a frustrating half hour or hour, I said, I just wish I could give myself a frontal lobotomy.
That's right. You want to give yourself a default mode ectomy. Right. No, it's great, Dawson. This is the fun thing about what these pioneers in brain research have offered us is a kind of visualization of at least the brain correlates of these mental processes we have. We don't exactly know how the brain makes them, but at least when you can visualize it that way, it's actually quite helpful. I think a third thing I would just say is that, in our wheel of awareness practice, we distinguish the hub of knowing from the rim of the knowns. And this doesn't have an exact correlate in the brain, but it has a nice visual image as a wheel. And that has been really helpful for kids, adolescents, and adults to say, you're trying to strengthen or widen or, really bolster your hub and not let the rim take you over so much. And as a visualization, what's really fun about it is then you go, how do I access just straight on awareness without worrying so much about the particular things I'm worrying about? So, there are some beautiful analogies. I particularly like the one about a container of water. And if, the thing on the rim that's really challenging is a tablespoon of salt. If your container of water is the size of an espresso cup, a tablespoon of salt makes it too salty to drink. It overwhelms you. But if your container, because you've worked on it, is the size of 100 gallons, then that tablespoon of salt, the same challenge, is diluted. And that's what we want to do with a spacious awareness in the hub. Other people have used other analogies like, your thoughts and preoccupations, for example, and emotions, memories. They're like clouds, and your awareness, and they sometimes just call it the mind, is the sky. And so just let the clouds float by, but the sky contains it all. Whatever analogy you like, for the wheel point of view, we think of, you can actually move this spoke of attention around the rim. So it's a very useful kind of, active visualization where you're moving spoke from thing to thing on the rim. And, like when I did the wheel practice this morning, it was just so beautiful. There have been, as you can know, in our state of California, there's a lot of terrible things going on with the fires and a lot of politics going on now. And so I just woke up oh my God, there's so much rim stuff. And I said, something, this is going to be a great thing to do the wheel. I did the wheel, and what a relief to let the preoccupations of the rim find their context, find their relative place in, especially when you access the hub directly in one part of the practice. That spaciousness of the hub is like, it's this big sigh of relief that I could go to kind of this timeless, boundless place of awareness, and then just see the politics, the fires, all within a context of, the flow of being a part of nature, and just the love that you feel there, the interconnection that you get from that hub. It was just such a joyful switch. And then when the meditation was done, the feeling in my body was just so profoundly different than when I was beginning the practice. It was like, I really need this today. And sure enough, it followed through. It doesn't always have to work like that, but today was particularly wonderful. And I was very joyous and could face the continuing information about what's going on our planet.
That spaciousness then is the perspective from which you're able to view those things. I know, Dan, the fires here in Northern California actually began on Friday. And as they began, it didn't look as though they would affect my wife and I, but I was saying to myself, I said to her, what can we do to help people? And we got a text from a friend of ours then saying, I want to come over to your house because my house is in danger. And within a few hours, we had about 12 people
Yeah.
house. And I also rushed out and bought one of the last generators available in the county. And so with the generator, we'd just gone shopping. We had plenty of food. And so we had a whole bunch of people here. And so until the power came back on, either some of them found other places. But so we spent several days with people we knew. And it was interesting to be in that place meditating. I was the only meditator there besides my wife. And they were so disturbed by the news. They were disturbed by the political reports. They were disturbed by various facts that are just floating out there in isolation. And I became aware of what a precious thing a practice is, because if you have that hub, if you have that sense of spaciousness, if you have the perspective which to view these things, then you're much calmer, and you don't discount what's going on there. You aren't indifferent to what's happening to the rest of the world. In fact, you're perhaps more sensitive to it, but it's just that you're seeing it from that place of certainty and security. And I was so struck by the difference between the people who had that in the room and those who were just buffeted by the winds of fear, by the random news reports coming out, by without that anchor of awareness. It's a much scarier place to live in if you don't have that hub.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's so interesting you say that. I'm reading a wonderful, wonderful book that'll be out soon for just endorsing it. It's kind of an honoring of Joanna Macy, and Joanna combines systems thinking with deep, meditative wisdom from many traditions, but including the Buddhist tradition. And in other books, like World is Self, World is Lover, or Active Hope, these fabulous books of Joanna's, you see this wisdom that's being reported by people who've worked with her over the years. This way where you bring, in the Garrison Institute, we have a great phrase, the inner wisdom and, timeless wisdom and timely action. And so the timeless wisdom is this, to put it simply, this capacity to access this timeless and expansive place of open awareness, this hub of the wheel in a metaphor terms. And from that place, really cultivate what Alyssa Epple and I just did a little talk on the climate crisis and emotional resilience, a little teeny audio piece that we just are putting out on our newsletters. And it was this idea, you cultivate the inner wisdom, the inner spaciousness of that hub, if you will. That's just one way to think about it. And then you then say, I can see things clearly as they are. The true meaning of the word mindfulness is, to remind, to bring back to mind a way of seeing the truth clearly. So without getting lost in the worries about the rim, you actually can see what's actually on the rim. What's that?
Just one minute warning. We'll wrap it up in a minute here.
It allows for, timely action that isn't driven, as Gary Snyder, the poet, said, we can't do this out of guilt and we can't do this out of fear to serve the planet. We have to do it out of love. And what's been so fascinating to me in this 10,000 person survey I did of the wheel was love and interconnection seem to co-arise with this pure awareness of the hub. And so I think that's maybe what you and your wife were experiencing as your friends were over, is you come from this place of love, awareness, interconnection, and it doesn't make you passive. It makes you super clear and resilient to then do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Please stay tuned. You're listening to High Energy Health. My name is Dawson Church, and we'll be back with more from Dr.
Dawson Church's award-winning book, Mind to Matter, has been hailed as one of the best science and health books of the decade. Over 400 studies show that your brain has the ability to turn thoughts to things, and that when you use this superpower deliberately, you can create an extraordinary life. Mind to Matter is the science and practice of how our brains create reality, and Dawson is so committed to helping people transform that he's giving copies of the book away free at mindtomatter.com. Claim your free copy at mindtomatter.com now. Imagine your love life, your health, your money, your career, your spiritual path. If you had the ability to turn your dreams into reality, the people who have discovered how to do this are master manifestors. Now you can learn their secrets at mastermanifestor.com. They'll give you a 21-day crash course in intuition, synchronicity, and manifestation. In just 7 minutes each day, the experts at mastermanifestor.com will train your brain to be like theirs. mastermanifestor.com. There's a completely natural method to help boost your immune system, maybe even up to 113% in a week. If you're interested in saving money without supplements and other expensive remedies, then explore the 7-Day Immunity Booster Program. It includes 7 powerful audio programs. 2 clinical trials even show that these methods can help increase your body's immunity naturally. So visit StressDump.com and find out how you can boost your immune system. That's StressDump.com. StressDump.com. Imagine having a certified wellness professional at your service 24/7. Whenever you're stressed, anxious, angry, sleepless, or depressed, you get help the moment you need it. You can talk to a compassionate practitioner anytime you want at mystresssolution.com. In the Stress Solution app, trained experts are standing by when you need them most. Experience a free introductory session at mystresssolution.com. You never have to face your problems alone. Get instant help at mystresssolution.com. Helping other people heal is deeply satisfying. Watching a child's pain disappear before your eyes, a loved one calming down after a panic attack, or a veteran recovering from PTSD is a wonderful feeling. Imagine yourself with the skills and confidence to help people every single day and a rewarding career in energy healing. Taught by expert faculty, you'll become skilled in techniques validated in over 1,000 scientific studies. So get certified as an energy psychology professional today at www.newhealer.com. Your first course is free at www.newhealer.com.
Hello and welcome back to High Energy Health. I'm your host, Dawson Church, and each week on the show, I bring you information and also inspiration. The inspiration to be inspired enough to change, to practice, to do these things. And these are wonderful ideas to contemplate and think about, wonderful possibilities to consider. But what is really essential is that we practice them, that you apply these things. So as well as hearing the information, just focus on how you can actually use it and apply it in your life. If you can tweak your habits in a way that supports your health and well-being, it's enormously important. There was a study published last month that compared optimists and pessimists over the course of 30 years. It was a long-term study with lots of people in it, men and women. And the researchers found that optimism produced was associated with about a 10-year increase in lifespan. You were much more likely to reach an advanced age of 85 or more if you're an optimist, and you lived for about 10 years longer than a pessimist if you did reach that age. And so just tweaking things like the way you see the world, your perceptions, your ability to calm yourself, your practice of emotional self-regulation, your methodology for releasing stress, all of these things have an enormous effect on your wealth, your health, your well-being, and your quality of life over time. It is so worth practicing these things. So what I want to encourage you to do is not just listen, not just enjoy, but also think about what you can do, what you can apply in your life, because it makes a huge difference both in your longevity and your quality of life. So Dan, you were mentioning before the break about the 10,000 person survey of those doing the hub meditation practice. What did that survey show?
So the setup is, the idea that you could integrate consciousness, coming from the idea that integration was health, consciousness was needed for change. So what if you combine those two? And then that was what led to the creation of the Wheel of Awareness practice, where you distinguish the knowing of awareness in the hub from the knowns on the rim. And then you take this singular spoke of attention, it's a table in our office, but in this metaphor wheel, and you move it around the rim, and then ultimately you bend the spoke around and explore the hub itself. So that's the practice. And I started doing it in workshops, and because I'm a scientist, I was curious to know what the experience was, and I would record when anyone would take the microphone or write me notes or whatever. And then I did this systematically, initially with 10,000 people, and looked at those results and tried to come up with a scientific framework that matched the direct first-person descriptions of what, for example, the hub was like. And that's what I wrote up in this book, Aware, that you mentioned. And it just became a fascinating opportunity. Now I've done it with about 48,000 people. I just came back from Europe and did this practice in different settings there. And it was quite fascinating that no matter where you go, whether it's, Asia or Australia or Europe or North America, wherever you go, the findings are pretty much universal. So the person could have never meditated before in their life, or they could be running a monastery or a meditation center. It could be someone from this religion or that religion, from this meditation history, from that ethnic background, from that race, this age, that age, gender, didn't matter. So that was interesting that you had universal findings across cultures. And then the specifics of what came up became particularly fascinating. And, I tried to, I was speaking at a bunch of scientific meetings recently. So I tried to be super clear, and I'll say it right here, that when you gather the first person experience of systematic meditators, that is, who are doing the exact same meditation every time, and then you hear the results from individuals that are different across time, it's just an interesting survey finding when people say, for example, that in the hub, time disappears, that there's a shift in the quality of being. There's a feeling of being interconnected to everything. There's a sense of love that comes up. There's a feeling for some of God, of this incredible sense of joy, of bliss, of peace, of belonging, of coming home. And this is said over and over and over again. And you could say, well, of course it comes up like that. Well, all this is a wheel of awareness practice where you're having the knowing of consciousness be metaphorically visualized as a hub. So I don't know what the obvious thing is about why love should be in that hub, or why would interconnection be in that hub, or why would a sense of bliss be in the hub, or joy, or relief, or a lot of people say empty but full. What does that mean? So I went on a search once the 10,000 people were done with the survey, and I continued the workshops to gather all the other people, but I stopped the recordings because it just became enough data. So I was looking for a scientific framework that fit the direct reports of the hub, basically asking the scientific question, what do these experiences in the hub inform us about the nature of pure awareness? So I looked at all the brain studies, and though there were brain correlates with a state of awareness like that could be simply summarized with the word integration, massive integration in the brain, where you're linking differentiated parts to each other, that didn't really say why it was timeless or why it was empty but full. It looked like it was the correlate, but it really wasn't a logical embracing of these descriptions. So I ended up being fortunate to be a junior faculty at a meeting with 150 physicists for a week, where I just drilled down on them on two big questions, what is time and what is energy? And because the proposal had been made years before that the mind, including consciousness, might be an emergent phenomena that arose from energy flow. And they said something that was absolutely life-changing for me. They said, in their view, as physicists, quantum physicists in particular, energy is the movement from possibility to actuality. And when we build on what that might be, its correlation to the hub, we can dive into some really fascinating things that support what the hub might actually be in some remarkably, what is called consilient ways that fit the first person reports on the one hand, the scientific framework on the other. And just because it fits doesn't mean it's accurate or true, but it means it's probably worth asking the question, could it be true? And that we can dive into next if you want.
I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear that because that whole dance of energy and then matter and actuality is a remarkable one, and the way energy creates matter in so many ways. And I'd love to know what physicists said. You know, all of the early quantum physicists, Einstein and all the others, viewed quantum physics as the intersection point between metaphysical and the physical. So it's interesting reading their work and seeing how they saw it that way. So I'd love to hear what the current generation has to say.
Absolutely. Do you want to dive into that now, or is there
Please.
a break we need to take?
No, we have a few minutes left in this. Well, actually, we do have heading to break in a few minutes, so a few seconds. So we'll go ahead and take a break now, and then pick this up afterwards. You're listening to High Energy Health. My name is Dawson Church. I'm speaking today with Dr. Dan Siegel, and his newest book is called Aware, and the subtitle is The Science and Practice of Presence. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back after a break.
Dawson Church's award-winning book, Mind to Matter, has been hailed as one of the best science and health books of the decade. Over 400 studies show that your brain has the ability to turn thoughts to things, and that when you use this superpower deliberately, you can create an extraordinary life. Mind to Matter is the science and practice of how our brains create reality, and Dawson is so committed to helping people transform that he's giving copies of the book away free at mindtomatter.com. Claim your free copy at mindtomatter.com now. Imagine your love life, your health, your money, your career, your spiritual path. If you had the ability to turn your dreams into reality, the people who have discovered how to do this are master manifestors. Now you can learn their secrets at mastermanifestor.com. They'll give you a 21-day crash course in intuition, synchronicity, and manifestation. In just 7 minutes each day, the experts at mastermanifestor.com will train your brain to be like theirs. mastermanifestor.com. There's a completely natural method to help boost your immune system, maybe even up to 113% in a week. If you're interested in saving money without supplements and other expensive remedies, then explore the 7-Day Immunity Booster Program. It includes 7 powerful audio programs. 2 clinical trials even show that these methods can help increase your body's immunity naturally. So visit StressDump.com and find out how you can boost your immune system. That's StressDump.com. StressDump.com. Imagine having a certified wellness professional at your service 24/7. Whenever you're stressed, anxious, angry, sleepless, or depressed, you get help the moment you need it. You can talk to a compassionate practitioner anytime you want at mystresssolution.com. In the Stress Solution app, trained experts are standing by when you need them most. Experience a free introductory session at mystresssolution.com. You never have to face your problems alone. Get instant help at mystresssolution.com. Helping other people heal is deeply satisfying. Watching a child's pain disappear before your eyes, a loved one calming down after a panic attack, or a veteran recovering from PTSD is a wonderful feeling. Imagine yourself with the skills and confidence to help people every single day and a rewarding career in energy healing. Taught by expert faculty, you'll become skilled in techniques validated in over 1,000 scientific studies. So get certified as an energy psychology professional today at www.newhealer.com. Your first course is free at www.newhealer.com.
Welcome back to High Energy Health. I am your high energy host, Dawson Church. Each week on the show, I bring you the latest in well-being and happiness, especially practices you can use in your own life. My guest today is Dr. Dan Siegel. His newest book is called Aware. So this whole question of mind to matter, of energy to form, and what modern physics has to say about this. Dan, I'd love to know what your take is on that.
Well, thanks, Dawson. You know, the framework of science that I found fit most fully with the direct experiences of these people who were participating in the workshops was the framework of a physics view of energy. And I just want to preface this description of the framework by saying that, you know, I recently was at a meeting with a number of meetings actually, where some brain scientists get very upset that I'm turning to a field of science that isn't brain science to try to explore mental experience in general, and in particular, mental experience of consciousness as illuminated in a meditative practice like the wheel. So I've had people chase me down hallways, begging me to stop doing this. I had a breakfast just 2 days ago in Munich where two scientists begged me to stop doing this. And yet I was on another panel at Stanford University where it was just the opposite, where there was tremendous openness to it. And I even directly said, what do you think about doing this? And you know, the researcher said, it's a great idea, one of the most prominent researchers on the planet. So, and he's a brain scientist. So let's just say that there's controversy about what I'm about to say. And I want to make it really, really clear that what I'm about to say is just an interesting observation of an overlap of one field of knowing, direct first-person immersion in a meditation, and another field of knowing, the empirical science of physics, in particular, the physics of energy states called quanta, or units of energy. So it's a part of what's called quantum physics. And yes, there's tremendous debate among quantum physicists about what do we know and what do we not know. And we really want to honor that state of controversy. So on the cover of Scientific American, you know, there was a direct discussion in July 2018 of one of the findings of quantum physics. We'll get into it in a minute. But just to say that, yes, of course, there's controversy about it. So what is the proposal? The proposal is this, that if you look at the phrase from quantum physicists that energy is the movement from possibility to actuality, you can graph that out where the bottom of the graph would correlate to what quantum physicists call a sea of potential, or the quantum vacuum. And what this is, it's a mathematical space, which kind of doesn't have intuitive value because we live in these big bodies, but we're not talking about what's called Newtonian macro state worlds. We're talking about the world or realm of reality that's energy. Now, what is a unit of energy? A unit of energy is a probability field. And also you intuitively go, what is that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, if you graph this out where the up and down axis of our the y-axis it's called, is the probability distribution curve. The bottom of it would be lowest probability. So if there were 1 million words we would share, then your chance of knowing Dawson would be 1 out of 1 million. So we put that near zero place at the bottom of that up and down axis. But once I said ocean, it would manifest from possible at the bottom, 1 in 1 million, to actual. I said ocean, and that would be 100%. So the top of this graph, if you will, top of the diagram would be 100%. So you go between basically 0 or near 0 all the way to 100%. All right, that's fine. And then going left to right on your diagram would be change or time. And then in and out of the diagram to make it three-dimensional would be how many things are happening all at once, called diversity. In any event, the bottom of this diagram is the formless source of all form. And this is just physics talk. For the quantum vacuum, it's potential energy, so it's before anything manifests in actuality. Now, you go through degrees of probability that we won't talk about now, but if I said I'm only going to say 1 of 5 oceans, you'd be not at this bottommost place, you would be at basically this spot of 1 out of 5 or 20%. Right, that's where you begin. And then I say Indian Ocean, and I manifest actual from possible. In this graph, you could basically graph out exactly something that correlates to what people describe in the 10,000 person survey, which is that a thought or a memory or an emotion is probably a peak on this graph of some possibility that's become actual. A mood, which includes a state of mind and intention and attitude, like kindness, for example, might have elements of this, or depression or shame could be like a plateau, this higher probability state. And then the interesting thing is that the plane of possibility is what we call it in the graph, correlates with the sea of potential or quantum vacuum. It's empty of form, but full of possibility. So that correlates with the common statement, it's empty yet full. I don't know what I mean, but that's what it feels like. It has awareness there for reasons we don't know why. But interconnection is where basically it's connected to everything. It's the generator of diversity, which you can call the GOD. It is it's the source of anything manifesting. And I don't know why the subjective experience of being aware, of knowing, comes from there. But here's the proposal. It might be completely wrong. 1,000 underscores. It might be wrong, because people somehow don't hear that when I say that. But it might be right, or partially right anyway. And here's the proposal, that being aware, the knowing of consciousness, comes when the energy probability position is moved into the plane of possibility, and that your state of mind would be a plateau, and your thought, emotion, memory would be peaks, and that there's a continuity, there's a continuum between the stuff of consciousness and the stuff of mental life. And that when we get lost on the rim, if you will, you're lost in your peaks and plateaus. And the art of living freely and fully would be to access the plane of possibility freely, so that you don't get lost on the rim, if you will. You don't get lost on these plateaus and peaks that correlate with the metaphor of the rim of the wheel. And then when people practice the wheel, like I do every day, what we mean by harnessing the hub or accessing the hub is, or expanding the hub, is that you've gained freer access to the plane of possibility. So if you're facing things like an illness or the fires here, you access the plane where it's this timeless way in which you feel interconnected with everything, and love is what arises. And living from love like that is very different from being lost on these plateaus and peaks that give you a roller coaster ride that feels incredibly draining. And so when you have your friends over, Dawson, the way I would interpret why you and your wife have a different way of approaching the fires is that you've trained your mind to access the hub from the metaphor point of view. But now we're talking about the possible mechanism, which is that you've accessed this plane of possibility, which is this deep well of resilience that gives you love, interconnection, and presence as the gift of the training you've done. And this is where we can offer this for others too. It's not just something like, oh, I'm born with it or not. Accessing the hub, which is the metaphor, I think the mechanism, this is a proposal, could be wrong, it's giving you access of how to live from the plane of possibility where love and interconnection naturally arise.
Yes, and of course that is a field of infinite possibilities, and so you feel resourceful when you're able to access that place. Please stay tuned. We'll take a brief break and be back with more from Dr. Dan Siegel. His new book is called Aware, and I'm your host, Dawson Church. We'll take a brief break and be back for our concluding segment.
Dawson Church's award-winning book, Mind to Matter, has been hailed as one of the best science and health books of the decade. Over 400 studies show that your brain has the ability to turn thoughts to things, and that when you use the superpower deliberately, you can create an extraordinary life. Mind to Matter is the science and practice of how our brains create reality, and Dawson is so committed to helping people transform that he's giving copies of the book away free at mindtomatter.com. Claim your free copy at mindtomatter.com now. Imagine your love life, your health, your money, your career, your spiritual path. If you had the ability to turn your dreams into reality, the people who have discovered how to do this are master manifestors. Now you can learn their secrets at mastermanifestor.com. They'll give you a 21-day crash course in intuition, synchronicity, and manifestation. In just 7 minutes each day, the experts at mastermanifestor.com will train your brain to be like theirs. mastermanifestor.com. There's a completely natural method to help boost your immune system, maybe even up to 113% in a week. If you're interested in saving money without supplements and other expensive remedies, then explore the 7-Day Immunity Booster Program. It includes 7 powerful audio programs. 2 clinical trials even show that these methods can help increase your body's immunity naturally. So visit StressDump.com and find out how you can boost your immune system. That's StressDump.com. StressDump.com. Imagine having a certified wellness professional at your service 24/7. Whenever you're stressed, anxious, angry, sleepless, or depressed, You get help the moment you need it. You can talk to a compassionate practitioner anytime you want at mystresssolution.com. In the Stress Solution app, trained experts are standing by when you need them most. Experience a free introductory session at mystresssolution.com. You never have to face your problems alone. Get instant help at mystresssolution.com. Helping other people heal is deeply satisfying. Watching a child's pain disappear before your eyes, a loved one calming down after a panic attack, or a veteran recovering from PTSD is a wonderful feeling. Imagine yourself with the skills and confidence to help people every single day and a rewarding career in energy healing. Taught by expert faculty, you'll become skilled in techniques validated in over 1,000 scientific studies. So get certified as an energy psychology professional today at www.newhealer.com. Your first course is free at www.newhealer.com.
Welcome back to High Energy Health. I'm your host, Dawson Church. Each week on the show, I aim to both inform you and inspire you to apply all of these wonderful methods to your own life and your own well-being. Dan, I was thinking as you were talking about accessing that field of infinite possibilities about the research into experienced meditators, which shows that they have large amplitudes of this high-frequency wave called gamma brain waves, and those are associated with creativity and insight. They have up to 7 times the gamma and sustained gamma of ordinary people. And so they're in this highly creative state. And so you can imagine that being similar to having access to that field of infinite possibilities and coming back then to your actual material life with a vastly expanded palette of options than you would have if you were stuck in your limited local thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think gamma, some people would say is a signature of highly integrative states in the brain, where you have massive linkage of differentiated areas. Yeah, and it would be the neural correlate of exactly what we're talking about, that even if you don't like going to physics and don't think it's necessary, it's the same sort of thing, that you drop into this spacious state, whether it's a brain state or a mathematical space state, either way, and research can help figure out how these overlap, if they do. But the point is, from our practicing way, if you can enter this, you do have more creativity, you do have more equanimity, where you achieve this state of clarity in the face of challenges. And what's really fun about it is, and I never thought in my life as trained as a scientist that I'd be talking about love so much, but the direct survey results of what people say over and over again of the hub is they've never felt so much love before in their lives. And, we just did a week-long retreat at a retreat center. And this is what, people kept on coming up to me as we were walking around after, doing the wheel. They would just say, I've never felt so much love before. So you've done this with 48,000 people, just the same meditation and getting the same reports. There's just a fascinating overlap of pure awareness with, this presence that you feel, this spaciousness, this love, amazing, the sense of care and kindness that naturally arise, this sense of interconnection, which comes along with a sense of belonging and joy and a sense of awe. You go, wow, I don't have to own everything. I'm just interconnected with everything. And it's almost where you've learned to let life happen rather than feel the false illusion, what on the Brooklyn Library, a beautiful artist calls the flimsy fantasy of certainty. And what I love about the model is when people say something about the flimsy fantasy of certainty, you can map it onto the model that learning to access that hub drops you into the plane of possibility where it's maximal uncertainty. So many people are frightened of that initially because they're supposed to be in control of everything, especially if you've been traumatized or just live in our society where you're told, you need to know the right answer to the question to get an A on your test and stuff like that. When people learn to drop into uncertainty, and I'd love to know if this fits with your experience, seeing it on this possible mechanism of you're dropping into the plane of possibility. So while at first, yes, that's maximal uncertainty, but it's also maximal freedom and possibility. So this is where it's once you start sort of shifting out of your fear of uncertainty, it's not that you learn to tolerate uncertainty, you actually learn to invite uncertainty. And as you do, your life shifts, because then you let love and life be liberated. And this is, you know, from the plane of possibility perspective, it makes total sense, because that plane of possibility is where all the other options are. And then you let them naturally arise. And as part of a system, they're going to become integrative. And that's, I think, where innovation comes from. It's where love comes from. Kindness is a natural emergence from the plane of possibility. You don't have to teach people to be kind. I think you have to let them access that hub of the wheel, the plane, and then love and kindness naturally arise. Does that fit your experience, Dawson?
Oh, absolutely. And I know, Dan, when I open my eyes and my meditation in the mornings, often I feel so much love. I actually start crying. I'm bewildered. I don't know where to put it all. I sit there, I open my eyes, and I'm like somebody waking up in a new planet. I feel so much love just cascading through that it's like, what do I even do with this stuff?
Yeah. And it drives, I think it's the fuel of optimism. You talked about the studies of optimism before. I actually think there's an incredible overlap of tapping into the love of the plane of possibility and the feeling like there are other possibilities from the stuck place we're in. We're going to find them, you know, we're going to find the lemonade in all these lemons, or, you know, find the pony in all this horse excrement. You know, that these analogies people say, what does an optimist really do? The optimist sees the lemonade in those lemons, you know, and so I think when you access the plane, and this is something, you know, for me and for my colleagues and students, for us, the plane of possibility is so simple. It's a science-based practice. It doesn't come from a contemplative tradition one way or the other. It has elements that come from pure scientific reasoning. And then it says, just integrate consciousness, you know, allow yourself to differentiate the knowing from the known. And lo and behold, these very spiritual things, meaning meaning and connection beyond a separate self, start to naturally arise. And so as a scientist, I never thought I'd be talking so much about love, but it seems like these are three strands of one fabric of life, which is love, interconnection, and the awareness of presence. And this is where it's, yeah.
Yes, you're not looking for love, you're not looking for meaning. Meaning is arising out of that space in the hub.
Yes, exactly. And it's just such a different way to live, to say, I see the practice, like for me, it's the wheel of awareness every day. I see that once I do the regular practice, it's just 25 minutes a day, then I'm letting some other process happen. And the beautiful and strange thing is that you actually, you aren't making that happen. You're not you don't have to have ownership of it. You almost are a steward of some natural integrative emergence that you can, you know, as my dear friend John O'Donohue once wrote in a partially completed poem called Fluent, you know, I'd love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. That's the way we can all come to live, in that fluent way.
That is a wonderful way to end, Dan. And I got to say, the one thing with every interview I had with you, it's been deeply disappointing to me that we have to end. Because I feel an hour goes by, it feels like 5 minutes. We've just, I mean, there are a million questions and we've only just begun to touch on them. I so appreciate your love, your wisdom, the passion you bring, and the practical application you're giving to this work. I just can't thank you enough. I'm deeply grateful for you sharing it and for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawson. It's an honor to be here with you, and we're all in this together, really. And it's an honor to be here on the journey with you.
So come meditate and join Dan and I in the infinite field every day, as well as a million other people. We'd love to have you there. You've been listening to High Energy Health. My name is Dawson Church. Thank you for caring enough about yourself and your well-being to listen. Now go meditate with us, join us, and see what effect these practices have in your own life. Thank you.